I'm a member of the licensing committee, and I've been appointed to chair this meeting this afternoon. Right, can I ask the other members present to introduce themselves, please? Paul?
I'm Councillor Paul Wilshaw.
Councillor Graham Baker.
And the officers?
I'm Sharon Davis from Legal Services.
I'm John Greenbank from Democratic Governance.
Okay, thank you, everybody. As I say, I've been appointed chair of the meeting, and we've agreed that there will be 15 minutes for each party to present their case, and 5 minutes summing up if you should need it. If you don't need the 15 minutes, then by all means don't take it. And if you don't need the summing up time, then again, you don't need to take it. It's not obligatory. Is it Mr. Susky that goes first?
Chair, perhaps I could just interrupt at this
Oh,
stage
yeah,
to mention and I think both parties have submitted some CCTV evidence. I've had the benefit of seeing these evidence submitted by Mr. Susky. I haven't seen the evidence submitted by the police. But I'm aware this is a public hearing and a public meeting, which I'm not sure whether there's any members of the public watching, but given the nature and quality of the CCTV footage, it's readily easy to identify members of the public who may or may not be involved in this allegation on the footage. So my advice to you, Chair, would be if you're going to be considering CCTV footage, that ought to be dealt with in private rather than in public, because you might inadvertently show somebody doing something that they're not meant to be and cause all sorts of chaos. So I think on the basis of people don't know when in the club that they're going to be potentially displayed over the internet in a Blackpool Council meeting, I think it'd be appropriate to consider the specific footage itself in private, although we can the rest of the hearing can be dealt with in public.
Okay, right. Okay then, so if we do, we'll go into private session. Is that agreed by the members?
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Right.
Can I just ask everybody who's not speaking to keep themselves on mute? It stops the interferences and it stops any feedback as well.
Okay. Right then, Mr. Susky, it's your opportunity.
Sorry, Chair, can I just intervene there and ask, can we just double check declarations of interests before we proceed?
Oh yeah, sorry. Do members of the panel have any declarations of interest? No? The answer to that, John, is no, they don't. Right. In that case, Mr. Susky, could you present your case, please?
Good afternoon, sir. I'll be speaking on behalf of Mr. Susky this afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, Mark Marshall. I'll be bringing Mr. Susky in for a couple of minutes just to go over one area which has already been put in the written submission. It just relates to the meeting he had on the 8th of July with Mr. Petrak and I believe PC Emma Pritchard. So he'll be coming in probably in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so, and we'll seek to round up within the quarter of an hour that you've suggested, Chair. Just by way of introduction, and it comes in relation to the police response, which was received yesterday, where I may have caused some unnecessary agitation with them. It certainly wasn't intended. Sergeant Cox has picked up some of the issues around paragraph 9.4 of the guidance. What I was seeking to do was demonstrate our understanding that a comprehensive list of incidents wouldn't be possible, and I was referring to some of the guidance which confirms that. These are proceedings which are extremely quickly done. They've only got 72 hours in which to prepare an objection, so it's more than understandable that a full comprehensive list of incidents was not provided, and that was the only reason for that area of the guidance being referred to. So I may have been misunderstood by the police in that regard. There was another area as well which I felt needed clarifying. Again, just seems to have caused some agitation with the police, or perhaps some misunderstanding, and that's the issue around the CCTV, the incident not being possibly covered by CCTV. What I meant by that was that some premises do not have 100% coverage in every single area. and it may have been the case that the incident wouldn't have been covered. I do accept it was covered, but I was just throwing in an alternative. So if I've caused unnecessary agitation, then I wanted to set the record straight before we began. I've broken down the police representations into 4 strands, and I'll just be amplifying each of those strands very quickly, but it won't necessarily be in number order. I'm going to start with strand 2, which is the issue regarding the condition of polycarbonates on the premises after 2200. Now, I've referred to this within the written submission of it being a very old, antiquated condition. I've double checked this morning, it went on in 2009 after a review, obviously under different ownership at that point, and it was a very different time from a policing point of view. There was something called Operation Avenue. Some people may not remember that, but that was effectively where they were going to try and funnel people into the town centre through knife arches. There was a big campaign around bladed instruments and glass-related injuries. Happily, the issue in relation to funneling people through knife arches didn't occur. You could imagine the problems that would have caused from a tourism perspective. But some issues around glass-related problems were picked up, and this premises was one of those. It was a review that was a glass-related injury, and that condition was put on as well as a short suspension. Incidentally, this premises has got a fairly bad history in terms of the changing of hands and ownership. There's been 12 transfers done on that, numerous changes of DPSs, a variation, and 2 reviews, one of those being an expedited review in 2016. So usually when a business owner buys into a business like this, these conditions that prohibit its viability are well known about, and there's numerous examples. Syndicate is one where there was some really strong conditions put on after police intervention, devalued the business by millions and millions of pounds, but the people buying into it took the commercial risk on board. There's another one on Queen Street, which was reviewed some years ago and had its hours clipped back till 12:30, and now has restrictions regarding the restrictive conditions is usually well known about. Mr. knew nothing about. To add to that as well, Diana, one of the managers at the premises, had a fairly standard interview when they took over the premises in July 2020 to go through the conditions. It's been a fairly routine exercise done by the police, the DPS interview. It was done by PC Pritchard, very experienced licensing officer, and Diana will maintain that that condition was not raised at that meeting either. Further to that, on the 8th of July, Mr. Susky met with Mr. Petrak and PC Pritchard. And at that point, I'd just like to bring Mr. Susky just to very quickly summarise the content of that meeting, what was discussed and what you went through, if you don't mind.
Good afternoon, everyone. On that meeting when Mr. Petrak came with Mrs. Pritchard, we sat down together. We went through every single point of the license, really. Also, Mr. Petrak wanted to see what policies we've got in place, what trainings, how we keep the records of every aspect to run the club properly. Obviously, he was surprised that we've had so many things done before his visit. He even admitted to me that he was visiting few places in the few days before, and obviously there was many conditions that the people who run the places were not aware of. So obviously he had to tell them what to do. In our situation, when we went through all of the points, he was surprised that most of them, even let's say 90% of them, were in place, which obviously he gave us extra indication on things. He helped us, said to us that he'll provide us extra signs and things like that, which we had in the premises, but he said maybe you can add next to the doors one, and we had that advice.
Can I just confirm, if you just clarify, was the issue in relation to the polycarbonate glass after 10 o'clock mentioned, discussed at that meeting at all?
At that meeting, I have to say we've not discussed that at all. We were not told that we've got these conditions in place. And obviously, if I would know about it, I would obviously take different actions. But yes.
And can I just confirm, did they go through each and every condition?
Yes, we were going one after one. Maybe we missed but that was down to all of us, because end of the day, Mr. Peczak was reading one after one at that day.
Thank you very much. If I just move on very quickly to strand number 3, this is effectively a default on the part of the license holder, and it concerns the attention to detail regarding the CCTV condition, that being that someone's conversant with the system and can download images on request. We hope that we've put something forward to address that measure, that being a step-by-step instruction which has already been shared with members and the other parties to these proceedings. But attention to detail across all businesses is something that is really lacking and suffering. A very short story on the services on the M6 the other night: bins overflowing. Every single order was wrong when the food was being purchased by myself, and the cleansing of the tables was clearly not done. It is a problem nationally in terms of staff retention, staff recruitment, and these things around most businesses are suffering, and they will probably continue to suffer until we get some sort of normality. He's tried to address it with a step-by-step instruction. It does take on board the learning from that particular evening, and he has got some information which may assist with the police inquiry, which we can share after this meeting, in terms of a name, the identity of the offender's boyfriend has been confirmed by Diana, one of the managers, so that may assist the police in their inquiries. We're happy to share that after this meeting. Finally, strand number 4 is the issue that I wanted to touch on around the pub watch conditions. Mr. Susky, again, has not been told about the individuals in terms of the names of them going in. He maintains they do the best to sort of keep these troublesome characters out of the premises. But there is other issues underneath the surface which I believe people should be aware of. He's involved in another business transaction which is causing some hostility, shall we say. I've certainly got it on good authority that the individuals involved on the other side of that business transaction are doing their utmost to cause problems for Mr. Susky, whether that be anonymous complaints, sending people into the premises to cause problems, and that is something that we will stand by that is happening. He has to deal with that, but I think the committee need to be aware of it, that you'll probably see that the disproportionate amount of complaints received about this business are certainly not something that happens elsewhere. And we believe that it's being done maliciously by certain parties. I'll say no more on that. Going very quickly now back to strand 1 of the evidence, which is the incident itself. Passions are high nationally at the moment with regards to misogyny in particular. You can see on the video footage that there's clearly some unwanted advancement made by this male individual. We're not for a minute suggesting that the female's reaction was proportionate or reasonable, but it goes towards the issue around the tensions nationally around this sort of problem. As I say, we've got information which may assist in this inquiry, and in order to move things forward, the step-by-step instruction will probably see a position that this CCTV fault will never occur again. There was some general points, and it's on the back of the additional evidence from the police I wanted to touch on. If you just bear been submitted, as Mrs. Davies has already pointed out, it probably would be inappropriate to show those in a public forum. But they are, in my view, incidents which occur away from the premises. There is guidance under paragraph 2.21 of the section 182 guidance that talks about antisocial behaviour away from the premises is a matter of personal responsibility under the law. Certainly from a licensing perspective, the message that Mr. Susky has always received and understood is that do not get involved in things on the street away from the premises. That's backed up by guidance, it's backed up by local advice that's been given from all authorities for many years. And he would maintain that, you know, these incidents are away from the premises, and what more could he do? In the same way, there was not a great deal he could do in relation to the incident that occurred, that the police referred to, the glass-related injury. Doormen were there on the scene fairly quickly. We've got assistance as best as possible, albeit it wasn't immediate on the Friday night, and that's regrettable. But in terms of moving forward, that's certainly going to be in place from now on. A couple of other bits and pieces of reassurance. You've seen in the written submission that the hours on the request have been reduced from a 4 o'clock terminal hour to a 3 o'clock. we hope that that reduces, if not halves, the risk that the police potentially feel about this event. And further to this, after researching some local events happening over these weekends, we take the view that the Saturday, the second Saturday, so just let me confirm the date, the 19th of September, would be probably not the wisest of decisions to go ahead with later hours. That being for the reason there is a pier jam event taking place at the pier. The police's burden on that evening. So I would formally withdraw the request for the 19th of September and formally reduce the request for the 11th, 12th and 18th of September to 3 a.m. in the morning. And the difference with this temporary event notice, Mr. Susky is the event giver. He is responsible for the activities. At the moment, the premises license is a limited company. In this case, it will be an individual, Mr. Susky. He's a man who takes his promises and responsibilities very seriously. He will be there throughout the entirety of that temporary event notice if he's given, and he will seek to improve and move forward any issues that he spots on that night. This is not a perfect business as been disclosed by the police, but he's definitely committed to addressing that. Am I about on my 15 minutes, Mr. Chairman?
You've got another couple of minutes if you need to take it.
Anything you would like to add, Mr. Susky?
Maybe in the final speech, because what the thing is, we would really want to cooperate with the police, and every indication from the police or direction would be accounted, and obviously will follow. It's not the way that we would like to make, let's say, any troubles to anyone. We just want to cooperate. We want to show that we can prove with them extra hours that obviously we can manage the place correctly. If we won't be able to do that, then obviously we won't never ever ask for another tens. We are the people who honor our words, so if we'll be given an opportunity or possibility to do something, we'll do our best and we'll cooperate in full with every single authority to ensure safety at the premises and also public safety.
May I just finish on one final point that I think we would like clarity from out of this hearing. You may be slightly reluctant to give it, but the condition with regards to glass at this moment was unknown to Mr. Susky until this week. It did come as a surprise to me that it was still on there. It's the licence holder's responsibility to vary it off. But I can tell you now, he's unable at this moment in time to possibly get enough polycarbonate vessels in place to comply with that condition. So inevitably, if the authorities, that being the licensing authority, insist on exact compliance of that condition at this moment in time, then he's going to have to close the premises at 10 o'clock anyway, until we can do some sort of variation or seek some sort of flexibility. So we would like that addressing in your decision, if you wouldn't mind. I'd just point you to the fact that at the moment, the police have not instigated any formal investigation as such in relation to this breach of condition. There's been no letter, there's been no request for an interview. I don't know what their overall intention is with it, but we maintain that it's been lost in the sands of time, this condition, forgotten about by many people, including the authorities. And it's been revealed as a result of this very tragic incident that it's still in place. But you'll see that that condition sits on no other licenses across the town. There's far bigger, far higher, riskier premises that probably would benefit from such a condition. And it was put on at a time long ago for very different circumstances that you're hearing about today. So that is it from me, Chairman. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Right. Do the police have any questions that they wish to put to Mr. Susky on anything or Mr. Marshall on anything that's been said so far? You're on mute.
Sir, if I may, as part of Mr. Marshall's submission, he said that there's some information which may assist us in relation to this specific inquiry for this wounding that we've referred to. Could I just ask why that information is only being passed now, since the incident happened on the 13th of August?
Certainly. I met Diana for the first time about 35 minutes ago, and it was her that disclosed the information to us in the pre-hearing discussion, and that's the reason why you haven't been told at this moment in time. As soon as I have the information about it, it will be mentioned, and we'll pass full details to you as soon as possible.
Thanks. Just one other thing, sir. Mr. Petrak is in the building, so if you would like some clarification about what was discussed at that meeting on the 8th of July, it would be possible for us to get Mr. Petrak if that's considered appropriate.
Okay, right. Thank you for that. Do you have any other questions? Do members wish to hear from Mr. Petrak?
Could I interject, Chair,
Yeah.
on that procedural point? Regulation 8 notice, which is submitted by all parties, discloses who you're going to use as either a witness or provide information to the committee. And that should have been filled out if someone's going to speak at the hearing. So that's my view on that situation.
Well, Mr. Marshall, with the greatest respect, I think you have raised the issue. Well, Mr. Susky says that he had a meeting with Mr. Petrak, and Mr. Petrak said he's talking about what Mr. Petrak said at that meeting. I think if the committee wanted to hear Mr. Petrak's view of what was said at that meeting, I don't see how you're in a position to dispute that, because you've raised the issue as part of your case.
It was also raised within the written submission, so there would have been ample time to make those amendments. With no problems, by the way, for him speaking. No problems at all. I just wanted to make the point.
I think it would be useful to hear from Mr. Petrak at some point then. Right. Do the police have any further questions to Mr. Susky or to Mr. Marshall?
Sir,
Mr. Susky, because it's his application.
So it's not a question, it's just that we will be in effect contesting what has been said in terms of what was spoken at the meeting of the 8th of July. Our assertion would be that all conditions on the licence were discussed at this meeting. So there should be no suggestion that any of the conditions were left in any doubt. Right.
Okay. Right. If there's no further questions from the police, I'm going to follow up on that. Mr. Susky, when you were discussing these conditions with Mr. Petrak,
Yes.
Right, I'm assuming that you had a copy of them in front of you and that you'd previously read them.
Yes, well, the thing is that's why so many points were in place. Obviously, right. I don't know how I could miss that. Yes.
So at that meeting in July, you were aware that there was a condition within the license that said that you had to have these polycarbonate.
I'm sorry, I didn't, and realistically we went through that meeting and nothing was revealed at that time, so that's why I was not aware up to now. I'm sorry.
I'm not asking you if you discussed them at that meeting. Had you read the conditions?
Of course.
Before?
Of course.
You went to the meeting?
Yes.
So you were aware before you went to the meeting that there was a condition within your license or your company's license that said that you had to have polycarbonate glasses after 10 o'clock.
John, I should have, but I have to say that I wasn't. I'm not sure why I missed that point at the time. I cannot say why, because other points, every single point was in place. I cannot say why I missed that one. And if that would be, let's say, revealed at the meeting with Mr. Petrak, I would definitely implement that to the place, or I would apply for a minor variation to take that point off. I'm sorry, I've missed that one, which not usually happening in my work ethic, but I've missed that one, and I have to admit.
But it's not Mr. Petrak's responsibility.
No, it's mine, of course,
to make sure that you've read the conditions.
Yes, of course. Of course it's not. And Mr. Petrak came and helped us in the huge way, as he always is. Because I have to say, Mr. Petrak helped me in many, many other fields regarding the licensing. And I cannot say anything. He came with a very good faith to obviously improve our premises, which he did. Because he obviously helped us with the signage, he helped us with the advice, as well as Mrs. Pritchard. So I have to say straight away, thanks to him, obviously, the places are better and everything's going better. We even improved the sounds. We talked to the environmental, thanks to Mr. Petrak. So obviously, thanks to him, many things went for better. thanks to his advice. But that one point I missed myself. That's why I admit that not usually happening in my work ethic. I could miss something like that, but I have to say, yes, it's my fault. I missed it. And I don't do any allegation to Mr. Petrek, because it's not his responsibility to read the license and follow the license. It's only my responsibility at the end of the day, which I agree 100%. And I have to say that Mr. Petrek at that meeting helped us a lot. Plus also we helped to the police. We handed out loads of fake IDs. We had the back with the droogs. We handed out to Mrs. Pritchard at the day. We showed them people who are from the pub watch opposite. We showed them on opposite venue, Hogarth's it was called, that the girl which was using the fake IDs was exactly in front of other doors. So realistically, we were trying our best, and they were trying their best for us, but I missed that one. I'm sorry.
Do you also agree that on the night of the incident that's been referred to by the police in August, that there was nobody on duty that could actually work the CCTV?
No, what the thing is, Chairman, it was a person on duty, but for some reason, I don't know how he could log out the system, because not everyone's got the access to that room. So definitely it was Mr. Marchak at the premises, and he has the access to everything. I'm not sure what's happened at that day that he locked himself out, but because of that trouble, and which I understand the police in 100%, their view, from that moment now we've got the full manual, and the people who are on duty are trained to use the system at the moment.
You say you don't know why he couldn't get into the stuff. Have you asked him what the problem was?
Yes, I've asked him. His response was, I don't know. I don't know how it's happened. I've logged myself out. It was so late night. I didn't want to call anyone. And he sounds to me that obviously it wasn't as urgent, that obviously the police probably found another way to chase the incident, and that's why he thought it's not as big case. But I obviously explained to him that things like that is a must. It's not just that it's a kind of condition, it's a must that we have to have in place. And that's why I've put that in manuals into the place, and every single person who is at the premises, who is managing the premises, has to be trained for CCTVs and for public.
Okay, I could make a comment, but I won't. Right, do other members of the panel have any questions that they wish to ask Mr. Suski? No? Councillor Baker? No? Okay then, right.
Now, could I just ask for one point of clarification so I understand what they're applying for? Mr. Marshall, you said you were withdrawing the Saturday of the second application. So you're still wanting the Friday to going into Saturday morning to go ahead? Or is it the way the application is written, it's slightly unclear? Is it?
There'll be 3 temporary events from 2 in the morning till 3 in the morning. So the license runs from 2. So those will be on the 11th, the 12th, and the 18th. The Saturday, so the Saturday is going to be the 18th. It moves into the Sunday morning, that's the 19th. Yeah. So Pier Jam will kick out at 11 o'clock. So
effectively, you're asking for 2 this weekend, Friday and Saturday night this weekend, and Friday night next weekend. Well, that was the position. I just wanted to make it clear. Thank you.
Can I come back? It's probably somewhere, but I can't remember where. Why is these 2 weekends? What is special about?
There's nothing special, sir. And I think really what he's looking to do is probably engage in some sort of dialogue, really, in terms of being able to test whether he can operate later into the evening. Now, these proceedings have brought huge amounts of information to light, most of which is very concerning, and there needs to be some conversations after this meeting as to how things move forward, those being perhaps with Mr. Suski and the police and various other bits and pieces. So there also is some important matters as well regarding the condition relating to the glass. What are we going to do with that? What's possible moving forward in terms of it being able to operate? Because he's not going to be able to get polycarbonate to the level that he needs it. And that needs to be addressed, really. So there's numerous things. It's not just the temporary event notice. I think there's a lot fallen out of this matter that needs airing. Perhaps these proceedings are not the correct forum to do it, but we were already in the dentist chair. So we agreed to just go ahead with the painful operation ahead of us.
Okay, I'll leave it then. Right. Are there any further questions from anybody to Mr. Suski or Mr. Marshall? No, in that case, it's the police's opportunity to explain why they're objecting to these now 3 temporary event notices.
Yeah, hello, sir. PC Guy Harrison here from the licensing department. I put together the objection to the TENS notice. The biggest issue for us is the fact that the 2 items on the actual license that were not adhered to directly contributed to crime and disorder at the premises in such a way that it would have been remiss of me to not object to this. My concern is, from what we've heard thus far today, and I won't go through bit by bit because it forms part of the bundle of my objection, but what concerns me is we're having from Mr. Suski promises about what will happen in the future, but we have to go by what has happened in the very short time that this premises has been open to the public. The incident, as described, is a serious wounding incident with 2 victims. The fact that CCTV wasn't available at the time could well have constrained the efforts, and did, of the officers on the night investigating this issue. And the fact that the object used was a glass, which should not have been present in there at the time, has actually not only caused a more serious injury to the person who was struck by it, but also the very nature of the object used has caused a second victim to be harmed in this, because the glass broke and hurt a second victim. Transferred malice, it's known as, and I know Mr. Marshall has referred to that in his bundle. Well, I think that the fact that the premises is looking to extend hours under these TENS is self-evidently worrying. When such a worrying incident has happened under the conditions they're already operating under, means that we would want to see the premises adhering strongly to the conditions it's already got on its license for a considerable amount of time before we would ever believe that opening to a later time could be safe. Also, as part of the evidence submitted, and I know it's not going to be shown under the hearing today, is the fact that we do have CCTV of other similar type of incidents happening, very worrying, and I know it's not going to be shown to the panel at large. But extremely worrying incidents of violence outside the premises, uncontrolled violence from patrons coming out of it. And also there's some footage as well of we've seen a member of staff coming out in the early hours of the morning, a member of the public, sorry, and handing items to young males outside, young males that would appear to be under the age of 18, is very, very troubling. Taken with what we've already identified and what's already been accepted by Mr. Suski and Mr. Marshall, I don't think there's any, from our part, I would have considerable worries that if they are allowed to open to the times given in the TENS, that other incidents are likely to happen of crime and disorder, and the police are going to be involved even more with the premises.
Sir, if I can come in as well then, can I just check that the panel have had opportunity to read the police's response to Mr. Susi's submission?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'd like to just quickly run through a time frame, if I may. So on the 27th of June, there was a wounding offence recorded at the Shadow Bar, which occurred inside, where an unknown male assaulted another within the premises, punched him, caused a fractured eye socket and a fractured cheekbone. That was the 27th of June. Okay. On the 8th of July, there was the meeting between Mr. Petrak, Mr. Suski, PC Pritchard, a couple of other interested parties. Our assertion would be that in that meeting, every single condition of the licence was gone through, and Mr. Suski was left in no doubt that he was under the spotlight as such, that the police and environmental health and the licensing authority themselves had significant concerns about the shadow bar at that time. That's the 8th of July. On the 12th of July, which was the night of the Euro 2020 final, there was disorder on Clifton Street, directly outside Shadow Bar. Sergeant White, who was actually on duty that night, was approached by Diana from the venue, who, and this is a direct quote from Sergeant White. "We were approached by the licensee midway through the match. She said she had concerns about the atmosphere inside the bar. She initially sounded like she wanted us to assist in the removal of some patrons, ultimately just wanted us to maintain a presence in case it kicked off. The overwhelming feeling was that she wasn't in control of the establishment and didn't feel like she would be able to cope without us being there." I was actually on duty that night as well. I was present outside Shadow Bar for a considerable amount of time. I firsthand saw fights taking place outside Shadow Bar, including two groups that separated and ran up towards Abingdon Street. I spoke to licensees later on that evening, once Shadow Bar had shut, and numerous licensees at various other premises in the town centre expressed concern to me about patrons from Shadow Bar coming to their venue later on and the significant trouble that it was then bringing to their door. Okay, we're then moving on to the 14th of July, which is a further letter from Mr. Petrak to Mr. Suski, or to his company, which is actually hand delivered by Mr. Petrak, expressing further concerns and warning him about the potential. That's Appendix 1 in your bundle, if you want to refer to that at all. We then move on to the 13th of August. Obviously, we've got this wounding incident, which my colleague has already discussed. We do have some photos of the actual injuries to the two males. I didn't want to share them in any sort of public forum, but I believe they are available if you wish to view them, to see the severity of injuries that were actually caused that night to these two unfortunate males. So, as I say, obviously, Mr. Marshall has then broken down his response to our initial objection. I've then sort of broken down his points again, if you like, to say what would be the police's response to that. Our point is simple, is that had glass not been available that night, a glassing could not have taken place within the venue. I believe that speaks for itself. CCTV would have been crucial to identifying the suspects. Two young ladies were actually stopped a short distance away from the venue by police on that night. Unfortunately, due to the fact that CCTV wasn't available, those two young ladies had to be released. Had CCTV been available to the police that night, and those two females had matched the description from the CCTV, arrests would have been made. Unfortunately, it now appears, as is often the case with these assaults, the longer they go on undetected, the less chance there ever is of someone being brought to justice for it. As a direct result of there being no CCTV available that night, it appears that this wounding offence will now be undetected. No one will ever be brought to justice to it. I know Mr. Marshall's already clarified that he accepts that the incident was caught on CCTV, but our assertion would also be that even had the incident itself not been caught on CCTV, condition 3, apologies, part of condition 2 on the licence is that the CCTV shall capture the head and shoulders of all patrons as they enter the bar. So even had the incident itself not been caught, we would have had CCTV footage to show the suspects as they entered the bar. That in itself would have been sufficient on the night to have enabled us to arrest potentially these two young ladies if we believed they were responsible. Moving on, CCTV, Appendix 2 is a warning letter from PC Pritchard dated the 12th of October 2020. So it's 11 months ago. That was a letter sent from police licensing with the knowledge of the licensing authority themselves to the Shadow Bar, advising that she had attempted to obtain CCTV of a serious incident within Shadow Bar, and the incident was not, apologies, she was not able to get the CCTV. This, as the letter explains, was due to the fact there was no one on the premises during their opening hours who was able to operate the CCTV. So that's 11 months ago. We had the exact same issue as has happened on the 13th of August when this wounding occurred. I've actually spoken to the officer. Unfortunately, it was only this morning due to leave. It's her first day back from leave. She informs me that on the 26th of August, she attended Shadow Bar again. She attempted to obtain CCTV again of this incident. She was unable to again, as no one was on the premises who could operate the CCTV system, despite it being open at the time. As I put on here, it is encouraging that Mr. Suski is taking learning from this incident. However, it would appear to be a case of the stable door being closed once the horse has already bolted, certainly in respect to this wounding offence. We've clarified about what was said at the meeting with Mr. Petrak. As I say, our assertion of that meeting would be that every single condition on the licence was fully explained to Mr. Suski. So to suggest that for some reason condition 35 has escaped his notice if he's aware of condition 34 and condition 36 seems a ridiculous assertion to us. We believe it's been a deliberate decision to ignore that condition on his licence and to continue to use glassware for his own convenience. So we have concerns about Mr. Suski's ability to promote the licensing objectives, specifically around prevention of crime and disorder and public safety. We believe the lack of availability of CCTV fearing a serious crime and the use of glass within the venue, both in breach of the licence, evidence these concerns and will stand up to scrutiny. As my colleague has referred to, Appendix 3 and Appendix 4 both show disorder directly outside the venue from the 16th and 20th of July, respectively. Certainly, to suggest that they are not linked to the venue, in the footage from the 20th of July, you can clearly see patrons from the Shadow Bar come out of the bar, go down the street and get involved in the fight. So to suggest that they weren't involved is a ridiculous submission, I would suggest. My colleagues already covered about the concerning hand-to-hand exchange with a very young boy outside the club. Obviously, the exact details of that incident are not known. They only came to light when we examined CCTV after the event. However, I would suggest that the licensing objective of the protection of children would be, it suggests that that isn't being promoted by the fact that youths were allowed outside the door and allowed to have a conversation with someone and past something at midnight at night. So I would suggest to yourselves with respect, paragraph 9.12 of the section 182 guidance suggests that all reasonable proportionate representations made by the police, unless the authority has evidence that to do so would not be appropriate for the promotion of licensing objectives, should be accepted. It is the opinion of the police that these 10 should not be allowed to go ahead, as there will be an increase in crime and disorder. And my final point for that would be, there's been 6 woundings recorded in the town centre in the last 3 months. Of those 6 woundings, a third of them have occurred within Shadow Bar. I've broken down where the other 4 have happened. Not one of them has happened within a licensed premises. I'm not suggesting they have not been linked to other licensed premises, but a third of all woundings, the most serious type of assault behind murder, have occurred within the Shadow Bar in the last 3 months. As such, we feel that Mr. Suski is struggling to manage the place correctly at the moment, and to suggest that he should be given additional hours and will manage those, we believe is to be incorrect. So that's the end of our submission.
Right, thank you very much. Right, Mr. Marshall, Mr. Suski, do you have any questions to anything that the police have said? And these are questions.
Yes, of course. So going back to the 27th of June offence, the response to that was the meeting on the 8th of July, is that correct?
Yeah, the meeting on the 8th of July, to my understanding, was not as a direct result of the 27th of June. It was due to a number of identified issues, both by the police, by the licensing authority, and also by environmental health in relation to noise-related issues at the premises. It was to remind Mr. Suski of his responsibilities, and it was to give him the opportunity to address those. So
the wounding, was it caused by a glass within the premises, or was it something else that's caused the injury?
No, the wounding from the 27th of June was caused by an unknown male assaulting another unknown male by punching him from behind.
So there was no glass involved, it was just a nasty assault, if you will?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right, okay. So we are only just dealing with this one glass-related matter on, was it the 18th of August or 28th of August? I can't think of it. Yeah.
13th of August. Yes, there is one glassing event inside the Shadow Bar. However, our position would be simple, that one glassing inside a premises is one too many.
Yes, I agree entirely. I come, from similar origins to yourself, but albeit many years ago. can I just ask, so what I'm seeming to gather from your written response and your impassioned representations today is that the main issue for you is the CCTV not being available on that night and the glass condition. So my question really is, if this incident had happened, let's say, I won't name another premises, but one down the road, which is slightly larger capacity, slightly more incidents, it doesn't have the same sort of condition. Would you still have the same concerns? So if a glass was thrown at someone's face, but this condition wasn't appearing on that license, would you still have the same concerns with that premises?
Absolutely. It's a very hypothetical question, though, because obviously we're only relating to Mr. Suski's application here. But obviously, as the police, we would have concerns about any such incident occurring at any premises.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, really, of this magnitude, if you will, apart from this venue, and these sorts of incidents occur fairly frequently, I would suggest, on numerous premises across the town. And I'm just saying, would you share the same concerns if it happened somewhere else where there wasn't a condition? So your primary concern with this application seems to be the breach of condition rather than the incident. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of, things happen, idiots, find themselves within premises and do stupid things. It's not necessarily the fault of the license holder, but on this occasion, because of that condition being there, you are attributing a lot more blame than perhaps you would do in a premises where there wasn't a condition. And that's really the point I'm trying to get to. Is it primarily the condition that's your issue, or is it the incident?
It's certainly both. So in terms of you stating that it's quite a regular occurrence, as per my statistics, which are pulled off the police systems, it's the only glassing in the last 3 months that we've dealt with in the town centre. Primarily, it should be the one licensed premises in the town centre, if you're suggesting it's the only one with a condition on its licence, where this shouldn't have been able to happen. Had it happened in another premises, we would have certainly been looking at it and certainly be looking at whether we needed to take some action. Had it happened in this premises, where it shouldn't have even been possible, surely that's even worse.
Okay, thank you. You put obviously a lot of material together since the written submission that was put in, I think, on Wednesday. So Guy's submission initially was fairly nuanced. There was one incident you were focusing on, and there didn't seem to be a great deal more within there in terms of evidence. But there's a lot of stuff that you've mentioned here: previous letters, breaches, other offences that are occurring within the premises or near to. Can I just ask why that wasn't put in the original representation?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very short time scale that the police have to object to a 10. There wasn't sufficient time for us to put a full document together outlining all of our objections. We felt that the one incident, be it within the last 3 weeks, was a sufficient level to display why we had concerns about the venue. Obviously, now that it's come to a hearing, we've had a little bit more time. We've been able to actually go through the records and find other incidents, and obviously the CCTV as well.
Now, I'm going to just stray off the path slightly in terms of your future confidence. And I think you've already answered the question within your submission, but this condition is extremely business prohibitive moving forward. Would you be amenable or flexible to this condition being looked at in terms of a variation, or would that be an absolute no?
At this time, it would certainly be an absolute no from the police, and I've spoken with my colleague, Mr. Petrak, in council licensing. I believe they are would be fully behind us in that as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, is that no further questions, Mr. Marshall?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, do members of the panel have any questions to the police officers? No? Okay then. If there's no further questions, Sharon, do you have any technical questions to the police officers? Right.
No, thank you.
I'm looking at people's heads and they're shaking. Right.
Yeah,
in
no,
that
thank
case,
you.
Then you've got, each party's got 5 minutes, and I believe the police go first in summing up. Is there anything you want to come back on?
So I believe myself and my colleague have said everything from the police point of view. We do not believe that Mr. Suski at this time is promoting the licensing objectives. We have significant concerns if he's granted longer hours that he will not be able to promote the licensing objectives. We will see a rise in crime, disorder, potentially damaging to public safety, and also potentially failing to protect children from harm. The only thing that I would say on behalf of the police, as per Mr. Marshall's submission, if Mr. Suski is by his own admission unable to adhere to that licensing condition, then we would certainly request that he shuts his premises at 10 o'clock. We would ask that the panel, with respect, would find that as part of your ruling. Please.
Okay, right. Okay then, Mr. Marshall, do you wish to come back and sum up?
I think we've got everything we needed to get out of today. I think the decision is fairly obvious, even though it may be unnecessary for you to reject these tens on the basis of the stance on the condition. There's obviously been a lot more information come to light since the initial submission. We obviously know where we stand. That is one of the reasons why we wanted to proceed today. I will contact Sergeant Cox separately to this by email, Nat, and give you what I've got in terms of the potential offender on this particular case. We want to remain in communication with the police and move this forward and get some improvements in place, because I don't like to hear what I've heard today in relation to these premises, and nor does Mr. Suski. So we need to tackle this head on, which we will be doing. So I think your decision really, Chair, is a fairly straightforward and an easy one, and we wouldn't necessarily blame you for making that decision. So I'm not going to oppose things anymore. We have heard what we need to hear, and we're going to take this forward and hopefully be in communication with you guys in possibly another format, with possibly another person representing Mr. Suski. But moving forward, this is something that we will communicate with the police over and probably address the Licence Committee again in due course. So thank you. Okay,
thank you. That then concludes the actual hearing. Sharon, did you want to say something?
Yes, I did, because obviously, Chair, with the first event being tomorrow, I need to get the decision emailed to somebody this afternoon. So, Mr. Marshall, would you be able to email me an email address to send it out to, please? You presume you remember my email address.
Yes, thank you.
If you could email me, that would be brilliant.
Okay, in that case, can I thank both parties for attending this afternoon and ask you to leave the meeting whilst the panel discuss it and come to a decision. Thank you very much.
Sir, can I just clarify, do we return to the meeting once the decision's been reached?
No, I think we'll finish the meeting now, and what I will do is I will email the decision. I will email the decision to everybody as soon as I've typed it up. So should hopefully be in the next hour, I'd imagine.
Normally you would, but because we're on Zoom and that, it's a bit more difficult. So the decision of the panel will be communicated to all parties as soon as possible after the meeting. All right.
Sir, I appreciate that. Just in respect of Mr. Marshall's point about the potential premises closing at 10 o'clock, is there any way of either having that in your written submission?
My advice to the committee, and I don't think the committee can, the conditions are on the licence are the conditions on the licence, and the committee can't give permission to somebody to ignore a condition on the licence. No, so I think that is my advice to the committee, that they shouldn't, it's not something that should even be entertaining necessarily in the decision. It's a condition, it has to be abided by. If Mr. Suski or any licence holder decides to ignore a condition, they do so at their own risk, and they risk obviously investigation and potential prosecution if they don't.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much then. And as I said, we'll communicate the decision as soon as possible after the meeting to all parties involved. Okay. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you.